Good morning, Council, those in our audience, those who are watching virtually. I want to welcome you to our study session of October 15th, 2020. And I would like to call this meeting to order. See, we have all of our council here. Our discussion item is the review and discussion of multifamily development. And at this point, City Manager, let me turn this over to you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. As Mayor and Council will remember, back in August of 2019, you all had a joint meeting with your Planning and Zoning Commission to talk about a host of things in regards to development. One of those items that was discussed a bit was around multifamily projects and where multifamily might go or not go. As staff walked away from that, generally what we heard was, south of the 202 was definitely not something that you all were excited about. But also, that council felt like you would just really have to look at these on a case by case basis as some of that came forward. We continue to have questions in regards to multifamily from the development community. I know you all here at staff hears it. But today, wanted to talk to you as land continues to become more scarce in Chandler as we reach build out. Some additional tools that might help council in looking at these projects and making the best decisions for the community that you all do in regards to development. We would also like to make sure that the development community, once it's decided, is very familiar with what we're going to be providing to the council, including economic analysis and things like that on upcoming projects. And so with all of that, did ask staff at your request to talk again about multifamily. Mike is going to talk to you about the economic analysis and some of the things with the different sectors, what you will see. And with that, I'm going to ask Derek Horn, Development Services Director, to kick this off.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As the City Manager mentioned a moment ago, during the joint meeting of the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission in August of last year, we discussed, among other topics, density and multifamily. Since that time, we've been applying the general direction from that meeting, which is to use the city's general plan to guide our recommendations on multifamily development. Tonight, Kevin and Micah are going to have a more in-depth discussion on multifamily and what we are seeing at the staff level. We also will have some recommendations at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin to get us started.
Thank you, Derek. Good afternoon, Council. Thanks for the opportunity to spend some time talking with you this afternoon about the exciting topic of multifamily. As Marsh had indicated, a couple things we're going to walk through this evening. One, just going to want to kind of get you back up to speed of where we've been, what's currently kind of in the pipeline. What is our multifamily development activity presently? Quite often we're hearing from the community, why are there so many? Why is it coming? Why is it so hot? We want to answer that question tonight. And as well, we get quite often asked the question, just does anybody review this, or is it just take it forward and recommend approval? So we want to walk you through how does staff review these proposals, both from a planning standpoint, but also an economic development standpoint. But we've got some kind of takeaways, soundbite takeaways for you this evening, as well as Marsh indicated, some recommendations to take forward this evening. Looking kind of back and seeing where we've been and where we are, this slide might look familiar to you. It was presented at the joint meeting in August of 2019. And it really takes a look at residential units completed from 1992 on up through 2019. You can see during the years of kind of explosive growth within Chandler, it's very intuitive that the single family homes are going to far outpace any type of multifamily unit. And that continued on as expected until that 2008 economic downturn. You can see everything kind of go down. We were, I think, one of the only cities in the valley that didn't actually flatline in our single family homes completed. They went down quite a ways. Multifamily did zero out for a while. And as we came out of that, it just happened to align with Chandler's point in our growth cycle that we were about to be reaching build out, and we were going to be kind of going from build out to build up. And so as we came out of the recession, it also aligned with the time that we were starting to kind of edge ourselves into that infill and redevelopment standpoint. So at that time, the number of large parcels for large single-family subdivisions like Fulton Ranches and Layton Lakes, those are going away. They're few and far between now. And most of what we're seeing are infill. And some of them are single-family, some of them are multifamily. but most of the parcels are in that smaller infill and redevelopment. As such, it is intuitive that the single family permits will continue to kind of diminish and the multifamily will climb up. And that graph kind of represents exactly what we would expect to see. So that's 92 to 19. This graph exhibit really is the last 3 years, so January of 18 until today. And uh, don't don't really want to get too hung up on any one case, any one location, and more just kind of visually see and get you familiar with where these things are and where they've been in the last 3 years. It's really broken down into three categories. Ones have been approved by City Council since January of 2018. The yellow are the proposals that are currently in the pipeline, but not yet scheduled for public hearings. And then the orange ones are the ones that are pending, that are already on the public hearing track and coming to Planning Commission in October and City Council at the City Council, the November meeting in City Council. Again, not really trying to zero in any one of these, but just kind of get you familiar with where are where are they locating? And some of my future slides are going to kind of explain a little bit more of that, of why they're located in certain areas and why they're not locating in other areas. So really, what's driving demand? Why is this so hot? And it is due to our success in one of our key goals of our general plan, and that is the growth of our employment. Is that success in the growth goal that is driving this demand? Mike is going to step up and kind of walk you through a little bit more detail of why it's so hot, what's driving that demand.
Thank you, Kevin. Mayor, Council. This slide is really like an economic developer's dream. It's somebody else validating the efforts of previous mayors and councils as well as this one to why they're willing to invest in Chandler. And this was a quote from a property owner who bought a property in South Chandler a couple of years ago. And it really explains why they were making such significant investments. And I think it really encapsulates what we're seeing. And it's our historical success, as Kevin has said, in driving jobs, attracting talent here that is fostering more of an interest in multifamily, coupled with the fact that we're driving out of land. So to read the quote, Chandler is one of the most desirable submarkets in the Phoenix metro area. The greater Chandler area is home to the largest concentration of tech jobs in all of Arizona, and it's positioned to perform extremely well over the next several years. So what we're seeing here is the influx of people to Chandler for employment opportunities. You may remember we've been recognized several years in a row as a leading city for millennial job placements, great place to raise a family, top 10 city to find a job in America. This is what's driving this demand. So these issues don't stand alone by themselves. They're tied together. There's almost a feedback loop that occurs when we have jobs that attract people. We need a place to put them. And so the multifamily market is coming in to fill that gap right now, especially because we're running out of large tracts of land to build out 640-acre multifamily subdivisions. So this quote is really something I think as a community we should be proud of, because we've been very diligent over many, many years about preserving land for employment, and it's paying off. And our vision that we set so many years ago is really in fruition, and it's playing out in why people continue to invest specifically in multifamily here in Chandler. Flip it back over to Kevin real fast.
Thanks, Micah. So as proposals come in, they generally start with staff, and by the time they end up kind of in that public realm and it shows up on the interactive web map and ultimately in front of City Council for an approval, we get asked the question, kind of, how do you review these things? Are you reviewing them? What tells you where is good, where is bad? And I want to spend some time walking council through that again at that higher level. So every proposal that comes in to the planning division is vetted through a hierarchy of documents before coming forward to City Council with our recommendation. At the top of that hierarchical pyramid is the general plan. It is that 10-year guiding strategic document that's adopted by council and ultimately ratified by the voters, the citizens of Chandler. And it is that 10-year vision for where to take Chandler. There are a lot of goals and strategies that are inside of that, but this is where we start with planning every single time. And so when we meet with developers, the first thing we look at is general plan. Is that proposal considerable in the general plan? That previous slide that showed all the cases that have been through or are in the pipeline for the last 3 years, that slide doesn't demonstrate the more than double that number of cases that we meet with developers and we tell them, sorry, it's not consistent with the general plan. It's deep in an employment area. It's in the wrong location for its density. Many of those have occurred. In fact, just 2 this week that I've had conversations with prospective developers. But we always start with our general plan. And within that, it references then kind of some areas are covered by sub-area plans. We're all familiar with the Southeast Chandler area plan and the Air Park area plan, and even the downtown redevelopment area plan. Those area plans, again, they're strategic land use guiding documents. They don't have the strength of law. They're just a guiding document and things that we use and base our recommendations off of. But any of the properties for certain proposals that are within those sub-area plans get vetted through that area plan in a more focused approach to that land use recommendation. Then we get to the actual zoning and the zoning code, and that is the law. That is what can you legally do with your property. Those proposals get vetted through our zoning code, and then all the way down into our design guidelines that drive the quality site design, quality architecture, quality landscaping, and things like that. But every single case that comes before council is vetted through here, and many of them never make it to city council because they hit this point where we're giving feedback to the developers. I'm sorry, it's not consistent with it. We can't support that. So the multifamily and that topic for this evening, it comes in many different forms. In the general plan, quite often we think multifamily is rental. The general plan is kind of blind when it comes to for rent or for owner. It is really guided by density. And so the general plan is very strategic and it breaks down the different types of densities of residential, and it guides where those things can go and it guides where they shouldn't go. So urban density at the top of that intensity is all things that exceed 18 units per acre. And think of things like Alta Steel Yard, which is about 44 units per acre, that type of development. Where can those go? The general plan strategically guides those to specific areas. So the first one is downtown, where we want to see that densification, that infill and redevelopment. That's kind of the first place that that level of intensity is guided to. The second is our high capacity transit corridors. Most of us are familiar with Arizona Avenue intuitively, and even Chandler Boulevard, but Row Road is also identified as a high capacity transit corridor as it feeds regionally up through other cities towards Phoenix. Third is our regional commercial centers, and around the mall out in West Chandler, we've got those regional commercial areas. It's guided to those areas as well. And then finally, the infill district, which is an area identified by everything north of Pecos, east of the 101, and just kind of heading north and east to our north and east boundaries. It's considerable in that area. It doesn't mean that it's permitted. It's considerable, and it becomes a case-by-case evaluation of is it appropriate. And there's other language within the general plan where it guides that decision-making process of you don't want to kind of slam up a 4 unit per acre right next to a rural residential subdivision or something of that nature. But there's language in the general plan that helps guide that area. But that's the area where it's considerable. So then we get to suburban densities, those 12 to 18 unit per acre, the more traditional apartments that we're familiar with, say south of Pecos Road. They kind of run along the 202 just south of Pecos Road. There's language in the general plan which guides where those are appropriate, along the arterial roads and freeways adjacent to employment, as well as in the urban areas where urban density is permitted, but potentially not appropriate. Again, in an area that it's directly abutting a single family subdivision, and 4-story, 40 unit per acre residential isn't appropriate, but maybe that 18 unit per acre is. And so there's language in the general plan that guides the suburban densities. Multifamily also comes in this medium density kind of concept, 3.5 to 12 unit per acre development solution. This is a photo of Brighton Place, a recently constructed multifamily infill development just north of here off Array Road. And it's while it looks kind of cottage and single family by nature, it's actually a one-solid lot and it's for rent, it's multifamily. General plan guides where this type of density is appropriate. And again, along the arterial roads, very much as a buffer between that low density and commercial land uses. And it's an excellent solution for remnant and infill parcels as well. And the general plan guides it to that type of appropriate area. I want to touch for a moment on condominiums and the concept of ownership. All of the previous described density ranges and types of multifamily ownership can be accommodated in any one of those types. It isn't just simply high density residential. It can be accommodated on all types of them. And again, the general plan is kind of blind between for rent and for sale in the product type. Mike is going to step back up and kind of walk through the economic analysis portion of this presentation.
Mayor,
Councilmember Orlando.
yeah, before you leave, Kevin.
Yep.
So if you had to put a percentage of multifamily density wise, 18, less than 18, 12 to 18, 3.12, what percentage of our units are in those four categories?
I don't think if I took a stab at a number, I know I'd be wrong, but I can get that to you.
Yeah, let's
I don't
get
have
that
off the top of
because,
my head.
again, I think that's also sends a message too of what may be multifamily but less density, which may be more palatable to a resident or a business or a community in a particular area. Is that, I mean, am I assuming that's correct?
That is correct. Each site is a case-by-case kind of individual review and evaluation of appropriateness.
Okay, and then I was trying to wait for you to lost my note here. Let me see if I can find it. So you talk about infill just being in North Pecos. We're not looking at any infill south of Pecos. Is that what I heard you say?
So that's an excellent question, Councilmember. The areas for the infill district simply make it eligible for urban density.
Okay.
So the greater than 18 unit. In our minds, the whole city is kind of in an infill state right now. So even there's corners down in Southeast Chandler that the whole square mile is built out but that corner, and it could be viewed through the eyes of infill. But in terms of the general plan, it's not in the infill district, so it's not eligible for that urban density residential.
So do we take into account any type of ideas, and I read through this earlier today, but do we take into ideas of demolishing like a four corner area? Do we have a thought process on that, or is that another presentation?
Mayor, council member, it is all part of our review process right now, and we've got a couple corners up in North Chandler that have got vacant, the single tenants that are vacant that we're currently in conversations with developers at potentially dropping that underutilized product and replacing it with something to kind of get more folks in that area. So it is part of it. It's not part of this presentation necessarily as a specific topic, but it's something that's a part of our analysis daily.
The reason why I asked that question, Mayor, thanks, is if we go through this process, this inventory, we're looking at vacant land. That's a missing piece, at least in my mind, is how many of those remnants, particularly in North Chandler, that we potentially could reutilize, rework, and then therefore we would put a multifamily there versus putting it somewhere else in the city. And that needs to get communicated pretty fast to the community here. And also, what does it mean as far as potentially partnerships, whether it's a city partnership or a federal, whatever the case may be. So that's why that's the only missing piece I have here. So if we could kind of get a little summary of that too, of what we think would be a good area that we could add to this inventory, so you could maybe subtract from an area we think it may go today, but if we put it north or some other place where it makes more sense for redevelopment, then I think that's a better answer for the industry.
Definitely a deeper dive study into kind of targeted areas.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because again, I want to make sure I get a couple of the industries in here, and of course they're here for their own reasons, and those are I want to get that input from the industry as well. It's the thought process behind that and what it would take to do something like that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kevin.
So follow-up question, and then Councilmember Stewart, as it does seem though, as you mentioned, that again, each area has its own dynamics, and that kind of defines the neighbors of that and what's appropriate there. So whether there's the addition for more density, it's where we're at now is probably what, about 4 or 5% availability across the entire city for residents, if that much, and probably not that much, maybe 3 or 4%. And with that, we're at that place where almost every site is unique, isn't it?
We are, yeah, that's correct. And the general plan, it's a great tool that doesn't necessarily drive the moment, but it allows us to kind of guide whatever it is of that moment. So we've had waves of single family, and the general plan kind of guides where that's appropriate when that wave comes into us, and it protects the areas that we don't want it going to. We're currently kind of in that multifamily wave right now, and the general plan has been kind of steering it to those properties, and then it helps us evaluate each one specifically because each piece now is unique. We don't have kind of consistent corners anymore. They're all
Sure.
different.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Um, Councilmember Orlando, you brought up the Four Corners program, and Micah, you and I have been talking about that for 4 years. Can you give us a real quick brief on why that is, where that's at, and kind of what your thoughts are, or is that going to come later in the strategic discussion that's farther down? You're going to be on it? All right. Appreciate it.
Right. Thank you, Kevin.
All right.
All right. So from an economic development perspective, I think that was a pretty good segue into my part of the presentation. We look at multifamily as an opportunity, a very strategic opportunity, again, on a case-by-case basis to help fulfill some other broader initiatives that mayor and council have set out for us. And this was a perfect opportunity. And one of those is revitalization. The strategic guiding document that council put out not too long ago really focused on revitalization north of Chandler. And so when we have these opportunities, and I have a following slide that really talks about how these tools can be played out, we really look at them in 3 different buckets. One is revitalization. Do we have underperforming corners, whether it's retail, office, vacant, that we can inject new opportunities with via multifamily? That's a tool. That's a very strategic tool to put this product type in there to help transform that area. Retail stabilization. We all understand there's a seismic shift taking place in the way retailing is occurring. Can we take that underperforming retail properties off the market and insert a new product type whereby we reduce opportunity for retail, thereby introducing new bodies, discretionary spending to help support the existing retail? We've done that in a couple other areas of the city that I'm going to talk about later. And then probably one of the bigger things that we look at from a strategic development standpoint is business and talent attraction. We are competing for talent. That is our economic driver right now. And Chandler is blessed to have very smart, hardworking individuals, and their efforts, their talents are widely recognized. And it's one of our leading opportunities. But we need to have them in the city. We don't want them locating in another area. So having housing opportunities across the spectrum, whether it's apartments all the way to horse properties, gives us an opportunity to compete for talent that we otherwise wouldn't. So we look at multifamily as a very strategic tool to help advance broader city goals. And a perfect example of this is the Alma School and Warner site. This is the northeast corner of the former Fry site. It is adjacent to the Walmart, which is a class killer, if you will. And when we're looking at sites for redevelopment, what this slide shows is a retail gap analysis. We perform these evaluations when we're looking to redevelop a site, recruit a new retailer that's net new. It's something that we don't have. It's not going to cannibalize anything. And in this example, that corner is a perfect opportunity. And staff's been working on this corner for about 3 years now, and we finally got some stuff kick free. We've been working with the adjacent property owner, which is Walmart, to conceptualize what they would be okay with. We've been working with the property owner to help them understand, guys, this isn't going to be a 40,000 square foot retailer. It's not going to be 220,000 square foot retailers in the remaining big box, and those inlines are suffering. So let's find a new use and be strategic with what we're doing there. And that's what we're making progress on. A lot of good things have happened over the past 3 months. They've gone and engaged a development partner to really look at some things to do there. But what we're showing here is Within that half-mile radius, which is really your neighborhood serving area, and even that 1 mile, we have a leakage surplus factor of negative 3.5. You want to be +1, right? So you have to go all the way down to 2 miles to really be a viable retail center. That area on the retail gap analysis, what that negative is showing is it's out punching what it should be doing, and the area is still underperforming, probably from an aesthetics perspective. So we look at that as a perfect site to reintroduce alternative uses, whether it's office, multifamily, medical office, to help with those revitalization tools set out in some of those strategic guide framework documents. A perfect example of how we've already done this is the former East Valley Mall site, right? That was in one of Kevin's previous slides, northeast corner of Alma School and Elliott. West corner, Warner. We did a project with that developer several years ago whereby we participated in the demolition of an aged retailer, a car wash, very antiquated car wash, to introduce single family for rent properties to help support the area. We've done it in other areas where we've gone from retail to schools, changing the use, removing retail occupancy. And we're really looking for those infill opportunities. And just this week, we met with our retail partners, both on the ownership side, the management side, and the brokerage side, to get their input into a formal infill redevelopment strategy document that staff is currently working on. And they are blown away, one, by council's forethought in what we're looking to do. They wish they were having these conversations with other cities because they're seeing the tides change on them, and they're trying to react just like the city is. And the one thing that they keep telling us is keep staying in front of the development community, the zoning attorneys, the brokerage community, the developers, the multifamily folks, to get the word out that we're okay with changing the land use to support other strategic initiatives of the city. So we are working on some of those documents right now. We hope to have some reviews in the near term for you all.
So Mayor, while we're on the subject.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. So while we're on the subject, because it goes back to the question I asked Kevin, you've given us a couple examples, which is great. So my question is still, and maybe if you don't have an answer right now, I get it, but how many of these opportunities are available? A, do you have someone specifically on your staff working these issues? And how do we measure this success or not success of this?
So the three questions, and I'll kind of work backwards through the mayor, council member. Specifically, it's a team effort. When we have opportunity sites to take forward, the biggest challenge we have in getting property owners to move is making it pencil. At a certain point, it's still cheaper and more advantageous for property owners to lease a property at 60 cents a square foot as opposed to tearing it down, demolishing it, and adding a new property type. So there's some finance and economics that you really have to look at on a case-by-case basis. We look at sites pretty much across the board where we see lots of vacancy, lots of opportunities. We will bring in developers who have niches that they really play out in those fields to try and pitch them on those sites. But the biggest thing is really getting the property owners on board with wanting to change the uses, because some of them cash flow just fine and they're okay with that. And so it's really on a case-by-case basis. We work with each and every site to change its use or to add additional economic vitality.
So you said it's a team effort. There's no one that you have a belly button that says, hey, your goal is to take a look at these four corners and develop these areas and, have a funnel system where folks are working in different parts of it, or what? I guess I'm trying to understand more of that. And maybe we could talk later offline, but
yeah,
I'm more interested in the hows and whens and wheres here versus the top. And I know we're trying to do a top level, but we need to figure that out, because again, that's a strong message to the industry that we're doing this. This is how we're doing it. These are our timelines. This is what we're doing to work it. This is the belly button to call. These are all positive, more positive signals, I guess, to the industry.
Through the mayor, council member, appreciate what you're saying and agree with you. We're a small team in economic development and planning. We communicate regularly. So if things come in, whether it's to me or to a staff member or somebody in planning or even in the front counter. We usually all get engaged pretty early,
Okay.
but your point is very well taken. And it was actually a piece of feedback we received just this week as well, just to continuing to have a front person out there.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
I also think, Micah, that I think the message that we're willing to change zoning has maybe gone out further than we wished it would in some cases, because a lot of the multi-housing that's coming to us now is requesting zoning changes, and not necessarily. So it's to me, it's just as clear to see what are we talking about, not just generic that we're interested in that. I mean, you mentioned Four Corner Retail, the Alma and Warner, great opportunity there, but we're getting asked as zoning is all sorts of things. Can we change this? This would work here. Nothing else will work here. And that's not the message that we do want to send in a lot of cases.
Correct. And Mayor, that's staff hears and has heard you going back to that August meeting. And if it really doesn't fit within one of those strategic corners and documents, we're very much pushing back saying, hey, that use that you're proposing there doesn't fit with the long-term direction the city wants to go. So we're definitely hearing from a staff level and pushing back in those areas where we don't think there's a lot of council support for going that direction.
Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Micah, it's a good presentation. Mike, Alma School and Warner is kind of like the poster child of a potential project that if something big happened there, it would be a good fit. And I think one of the main reasons that I see is that there just isn't a lot of super high density housing around it. So if you put something there, it would probably be good. And so on behalf of your group and I would like to see some sort of a scorecard that you all create for projects, because and give points in advance for things that are a positive, and just go 10 items and say, for this, why it's close to the mall, there's good retail there, it would be supportive of the mall, it's close to the freeway, good traffic, that kind of, and but one of the things is density in itself. And Fry Road, West Fry Road, I don't know how many units of apartments there are, but and I know people that love apartments say apartments, yippee, but I on some level they're a liability, and I know they bring a positive, but there's also a negative component too. And so part of that scorecard is also saying, this is an exceptional project. Why? And that means maybe it's not 5 stories or 3 stories. Maybe it's just 1 story. Maybe they're small, really edgy looking, facilities that and that have art pieces and a coffee shop that fit really good in Chandler. Chandler has learned an awful lot and put a lot into practice, and we just can't let us go beyond. And where other cities, LA, Detroit, many examples of people that say, hey, we're going to take it all and we're going to take it big. Let's take it and let's make sure it's good. Here's my big statement. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Councilmember Rowe. And I think later in the presentation, you'll hear some of the staff recommendations, kind of to your point.
Okay.
So here's a example of a non-strategic development opportunity that from an economic development perspective, and I don't want to speak for planning, but I think I'm going to speak for him anyway. Sorry, Kevin. Where we're approached and we don't support it. An example why. This is at Ocotillo and the railroad, South Chandler. We are regularly approached on it. It's right now, if somebody were to come in and look to do a multifamily project here, we would say it's not compliant with the general plan. It is not compliance with the area plan. It's within an employment corridor, which economic development protects very vigorously. And the surrounding land use compatibility isn't good. We don't want complaints, railroad noise. We know we have the bus barn from CUSD next door. We have some development going to the south that may be of conflict. And so we give feedback to prospective developers as they come in and talk with us, like, this isn't going to be something ED or planning will support. This doesn't fit any of our goals. And we do. We give them that feedback very proactively, very frank, and they can appreciate it because they want to know where staff's going to be and that we're going to be going in a very clear direction and not waste their time on a site where they could go look at something else, some other opportunity. So here's an example of a very non-strategic multifamily opportunity. So from the economic development perspective, you've seen this before. We also look at the economic impact analysis to the city. How is this going to benefit the city economically, financially in the long run? So we've put together a hypothetical example here that looks at 10 acres and what you could generally expect to develop on that amount of land. Office, 200,000 square foot building, about 34 million bucks to construct, and it'll be leased to an office user. Industrial, about 150,000 square feet, 16 million to construct. Going to a manufacturing company, a multifamily project, you'll get about 180 units on it with about 22 million in construction cost. And single family on 10 acres, you're really looking at about 40 or so projects, $12 million. And so from the economic development perspective, we run these economic and fiscal impact analysis. Generally, we don't do them on single family residential. We don't touch those projects a lot. But when there are multifamily projects that come in that have the opportunity to help with some of our strategic goals, we'll run them and we'll see what the impacts can be. And so what we have here is a 5-year revenue net revenue and expenditure report that shows you what the city could anticipate realizing over the first 5 years of a project here. And we usually model out 10 years just because it makes more sense. But what you'll see is on a multifamily project, that first year, there's the net impact is about $274,000. And that's really driven by the construction sales tax associated with the project. And then we make on average about $26,000 going down to $21,000 per year over the next 8 years of the project. And what drives the revenues and expenses we account for here to really figure out what gets us how is it going to impact our services and how is it going to impact our revenue, which ultimately impacts our services. So when you net that out across all those 4 land use opportunities, office has the highest opportunity to generate revenue for the city on that 10 acres, about $1.5 million over 10 years. Industrial comes in at 480, multifamily very close at 470, and then single family residential at about 119,000. And what drives a lot of this is the sandwich tax, the lease tax associated with projects. And so multifamily gets more of a economic revenue to the city because you have more people with discretionary spending due to density. So you have more opportunities to go out for lunch. You have another SRP meter. You have another Verizon bill. All those expenses that we incur, there's taxes associated with it. So when you have more people, there's more opportunities for revenue. So that density is what drives some of those revenues. We also kind of took the opportunity to break it down by fiscal impact on property type within the multifamily. So we looked at luxury units, average, and then affordable housing. And what this slide shows is the different net revenues anticipated, again, over a 10-year period for the city. So not going to spend too much time on this, not really germane, but just trying to show you how different property types associated with discretionary spending and lease tax factor into long-term revenues. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Orlando.
Yeah, so let's go back to that chart with the 180 homes there, please. And I'm trying to figure out here. So when a owner of 180 units, they pay a property tax, which we talked about earlier today. I want to make sure I was clear on the phone with you. Then there's the 1.5% PPT or privilege tax, transaction tax.
Correct.
That's subtracted from the total taxes that person pays, correct? Only on a federal level, but and a state level, but not the city. Is that correct?
Through the mayor.
We get
council-
100% of that, that's what I'm asking.
Yep, through the mayor, council member Orlando, we collect 100% of our transaction privilege tax.
Okay, and the same goes for wastewater and that type of activity. They pay their fair share in regards to metering and that aspect of it too, right?
Through the mayor, council member, yes.
Okay, I get it. Versus a 40 acre, what you said, 40 homes on an acre? And I think your numbers were 119K
Mhm.
per year, or is that over 10 years?
That's over 10 years.
So when I go back to this chart, you show, okay, 21, 21, 21, and then that's where you get up to 480. Then you get the one-time dollars put in there, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you looked at this, and I understand the whole discretionary fund and that aspect, but what's the average income of a person that wants to go for the high level, medium levels, that type of activities? What are the normal income?
Through the mayor, Councilman Orlando, the general industry-wide type of perspective, and I think nationally, is you never want to spend about more than 1/3 of your pre-tax
All right.
monthly
So
income
12,
on housing.
right. Okay. All right. It just seems like the houses seems a little bit low when you think about the average Chandler family is over $100-something thousand. There's 3.45, whatever the case is, how we got half a child is. I don't get it, but still, it just seems like it's like a little low compared to,
Through the mayor, Councilman Orlando, it is correct. It's kind of shocking, but over time, that the cost for service uh, is still there on the individual family level, but there's not the associated discretionary spending as high because of density. It's just a net difference based on density of
okay.
funds within
Understand,
within a housing unit.
Yeah, 180 families versus 50,000 or whatever the number is versus,
Correct.
40 times 200,000. I understand. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Oh, one last thing, Mayor. I apologize. When you include it in your expenditures, do we look at, is there any higher call for service, ambulatory, police, fire for multifamily? And did you factor that in for expenditures or just do a straight line versus, say, a 40 home neighborhood?
Through the mayor,
Cost of service.
the cost of service is almost, there's no distinction between cost of service on a single family or multifamily unit in terms of city expenditures.
Public safety
Correct.
expenditures. Okay.
But there is a difference just because you've got your comparison of 180 versus 40. So you're going to get 4.5 times more potential calls for service just because there's more units. 10 acres is not 10 acres, correct? It's per unit per unit?
Correct.
Okay.
So you're saying you're not, thank you, Mayor. That's what I was driving at.
What I thought.
Yeah, that's what I was driving at. So you're not seeing a difference.
The model doesn't take into account the likelihood for calls for service. It's based on budgetary impact spread evenly on.
Okay. So does the police department have those type of numbers? I'm just curious how we plug those in just to make sure we're really going apples to apples here.
We could, I don't know. That'd be something we'd have to explore on a unit by unit basis and call for call
All right. But
equivalency.
I just think I want to make sure we're doing our due diligence at all expenditures. That's what I'm, fair enough. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
So kind of taking us to the back nine of this presentation, we've spent a bit of time talking about just kind of where we are with multifamily, and just at a very high level, how planning evaluates these and what tools we use to guide us there, and then an economic development high level analysis of these things. As Mike had indicated, when cases come in, they're a part of our pre-tech process. I'm going to get into that in a second. But we have most of that analysis occurs in a conversational way. It's not really kind of charted and documented. And kind of to Councilmember Rowe's point about maybe a scorecard, something, there's something that we're going to be proposing to bring forward. But as we kind of, everything we talked about in the first part of this presentation, there's some takeaways that we want to kind of provide for council, so that as these future cases come, these kind of sound bites will stay kind of in the forefront of your mind. Probably the largest one is that as staff brings these recommendations forward, it's a generalized kind of economic development and planning staff coming forward. We will continue to follow the general plan. As we make our recommendations, we will recommend densities in appropriate locations as guided by the general plan in any area plans. And kind of to Micah's previous slide, we will recommend denial of ones that are not in appropriate locations as guided by the general plan. But that general plan will continue to be our guide. Touching on it momentarily and coming back to it in another slide in a second, as we continue to look towards workforce affordable housing and aligning Chandler kind of with that goal, we heard it through the Joint Planning Commission and City Council meeting. We've been spending time researching how other cities do it in the valley, other cities outside the valley. But that density can become a factor in affordability. As we bring these forward, it'll be a part of our analysis that we send forward. Probably the largest piece of the general plan that we continue to hold very, very close to our chest, and that is preserving the employment areas in Chandler. Employment has been the catalyst of growth for Chandler. It is the future of Chandler, and we will continue to preserve the employment areas as guided by the general plan. Language in the general plan does say that multifamily is complementary to the employment areas. At the edges, it can actually serve, as Mike indicated, a tool to help get employers to come, and they want a specific type of amenity for their future employees. It can be complementary too, but it is not a replacement for. And so, again, at the edges of employment, it can be appropriate. Kind of in the middle of it, bifurcating it, it is not appropriate. And so we will continue to, our recommendations will be following that goal of preserving our employment areas. And I don't want it to sound like a sales pitch by any stretch. In strategic locations, that northeast corner of Warner and Alma School, great example. In strategic locations, multifamily is a very viable land use solution, both for infill, redevelopment, and even on a site that just has never had a land use solution on it, but the rest of the area is built up around it. It is in a strategic location, it's appropriate. In strategic locations, it's not appropriate. And then as a kind of another takeaway, multifamily, it's not generalized. It is not in our minds one type of housing product. As we kind of walk through the various different variants of it, on your screen, you can see the three different images. You've got multifamily at the bottom that is detached, kind of cottage based. You've got then steel yard with 44 unit per acre multifamily. The image on the north is actually looking south at Queen Creek and Alma School, and there are 4 types of multifamily product and multiple types of single family product all within that one image, kind of all working harmoniously in that area. And so again, it is not generalized. It comes in many, many different forms. And as future proposals come forward, the evaluation of that location appropriateness is based upon that hierarchy of plans: general plan, area plans, our zoning code, design guidelines, and such. So,
Vice Mayor.
Right.
Well, he's
Good.
not back
Councilmember
yet.
Orlando.
Thank you. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that corner is really a great idea. You have your large family that abuts, Clemente Ranch. You have some multifamily in there. You have some smaller homes in there. It's a neighborhood. It's a really good idea. And I know I've chatted about it a few times with developers, and they were excited about that. So if we could use that as some jumping off point for some of this redevelopment, revitalization, I think that'd be great. And I'm sure, the council weigh in. But the other thing, city manager brought up a couple of weeks ago when we had our recreation briefing. And if it wasn't you, Marcia, I'll give you credit for it anyway, okay? Is that fair enough? See what I say, right? Yeah. But, we're talking about decentralizing recreational facilities. And that could be another component to this. You could have your larger family homes, you could have a small multifamily, you could have smaller homes for our workforce housing, and then that could be centered around a recreational piece, whether it's a small basketball court or a small park area. But we can be creative here, and we can make small communities within a community. So I mean, that's the type of thing that I'd like to see us work on our industry about. So anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor Lopez. Kevin, you brought up a really good point, about special areas, and each project has its own merit, right? There's no broad brush approach to each one of these areas. That's why we have all these numbers and these different circles and things like that. So it's good that you brought that up. I'm really interested, maybe from Micah's standpoint, and you guys can maybe tag team this. Where does this workforce housing fit within the hierarchy of needs for a Fortune 500 company that we're courting for those last three spots in price corridor that we're trying to preserve? Where does that fit? Where does it rank? I'm sure we know that schools are a high ranking item. We know cost of living and those things, but when you talk about affordable housing, where does that fit?
Through the mayor, council member, access to housing across all spectrums, like I alluded to earlier, is important. It's what we hear from employers looking to come in. So, either it's a high density or people who want to be in horse huts, like I said. It does come up. I don't think I could give you an honest, straight up answer saying it's, something that they say they must have.
Okay.
It doesn't come up, but access to workforce across all skill sets is something we continually hear to be important. And it's where a lot of opportunities lie, is figuring out where we can put additional housing to support employers across all levels. I just can't give you a definitive number or ranking metric at this time.
Okay. Since we're kind of at the end here, and I had another question for you as it relates to the Four Corner project, right? So we've talked about this at length. You mentioned earlier, it doesn't pencil out yet for these commercial real estate owners that still have 60% of it rented out. And we can't provide any other incentive but a demolishing of, like a helper fund, if you will, to demolish a location. That's the most we can do based on some gift clause issues or something like that. Help me understand a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because
So
I think we're all wanting this
yeah.
Four Corner thing. Like, the vision of this is beautiful, right? You put an apartment building on a corner, it livens up the other three corners, and we're back in business, and it changes life. But the reality is that that's owned by somebody who may or may not want to do that. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, that's the big first challenge, is finding an owner who wants to move forward with the repurposing of their property. The financial aspect is then the next hurdle we have to jump over. And we all know Arizona is not really tool rich when it comes to economic development. And so we are bound by the gift clause. But what we're looking to do is structure deals whereby we can provide aid to a redevelopment project, maybe help it pencil, but still being mindful of that gift clause. And Kelly could probably go into more of the particulars, but that's something we always have to keep in mind as we go forward on these projects, which is why we take a look at the net fiscal impact to the city. So if we're going to engage in some sort of redevelopment effort at a city level, we still have to make sure the city is protecting itself on that gift clause issue. So that's part of the magic sauce, whether it's incentives or density bonuses or public infrastructure. We look at all those things to try and get projects over the hump.
So I remember many years ago, though, we did get a presentation similar to this, and it did go into some of the numbers on some of the vacancy rates around multifamily, and then the current units that were already developed, those that were in the pipeline to come online within the next 12 months, and then those that were still, again, approved but never developed for whatever level. So there were kind of this graphic of where we would wind up, and then and if I recalled, somewhere in our general plan, it does state that we do expect to have, I think, I'm guessing here, but about around 18%, remember, of our total housing units in multifamily. That sticks in my mind. I don't know if that's correct yet, but
It's in that range, yeah.
around there in the high teens. And even after we did everything that was already on the books and everything that was already approved and everything that was penciled, we'd only be at around 12, if I remember correctly at that point. Again, this was a couple of years ago. would we be able to get an update on that? Something, again, we get a population update pretty regularly. So something of that kind of caliber, I don't know what level of detail, but to at least see where we're tracking against our general plan. Are we approaching it, as we get closer? Are we ramping down, or is it speeding up? Making sure we're not overshooting it. And if we are, again, why? And those explanations on density, as you previously mentioned, I was expecting that the density was going to be going up pretty regularly, a little bit more urban, and we've seen some higher, especially with the condos and some of the stuff around downtown. I think we're seeing some of the highest buildings we've ever seen in Chandler. So I would thought the density had gone up, but some of the multifamily locations have gone with these single cottages. So maybe that compensates. Maybe our density, maybe when in the end we're not going to hit that 18%, we're going to settle at 16, or because of higher density areas, are we now looking at this saying we're going to get closer to 20? So I'd like to see, where are we settling out? And then also as part of that, the like I said, the vacancy rates. I know I've got some family members actually trying to look for upgrade their homes, and looking at apartments too for my nieces that are graduated college, and just finding stuff within Chandler is very difficult. So I do expect that the vacancy rates are pretty low. But as a new unit comes on, another apartment complex or multifamily or a single family of homes, what is our vacancy rate within Chandler? I mean, are we hovering to where it is extremely difficult? People are having to go outside of Chandler to, even though they want to work and play in Chandler, they may have to live somewhere else because they just one can't afford it, or two can't find it. So it'd be good to see where we're at on those vacancy rates too. Helps drives, and those are data points to help drive our decisions on what we want to do here.
Through the mayor,
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, we did look at vacancy rates at different price points on apartments. I think the luxury was about 11% vacancy. That mid level was about 8%, and then that affordable was like 3%. But we don't hold me to those numbers, but we have them, and we can get that to the city council.
Julie, that takes us kind of to the end, and our recommendations that we want to put on the table this evening. So one, and I mentioned it before, our pre-tech. Our first recommendation is kind of as a city, when developers kind of enter into our realm, and they're going to come in through all different channels. Sometimes it's straight through the front counter development services. Sometimes it's through economic development. Sometimes it's through city council members. But guide them to that pre-tech as that first step. So what is the pre-tech? It's a preliminary technical site plan review. It's our bargain service that we offer. It's free. It's 10 working days. And it is that 30,000 foot technical once over a plan. Especially in this infill and redevelopment stage that we are in, it's a very valuable tool for the developers to get the big picture. What sewer buy-ins do I have? I mean, the things that are big dollar things, or something about the site that just doesn't work. It's an initial look over of that. It is also the point at which planning looks at it and immediately gut checks it from a general plan and an area plan and things like that. But to guide them to that first, so that they can get kind of an immediate, this is what your steps would be. This is how the general plan guides it. And this is what things would cost. That is the best place for them to start, so that they're starting from all facts kind of decision making. And if they choose to go forward on something that isn't consistent with the general plan, they know from day one, nope, it's not appropriate. But guiding developers to that as the first step on all aspects of the city is really our first recommendation. Kind of to Councilmember Rowe's point, we do that initial analyzation at a planning level. We do that in conversation with economic development, but it isn't from a scorecard or a cheat sheet of facts. We don't capture that in a kind of a punch card. And so that's what we're recommending. We're going to generate an initial proposal analysis that summarizes that economic development analysis, the planning analysis. A traffic is quite often the residents, once it goes through the process, we hear, isn't this going to increase traffic? Quite often, if it's taking former retail designated site, it actually would generate lower traffic. But having that traffic analysis kind of summary in a bullet point sense, our proposals are to generate that and generate that at the time of pre-tech, and make it a part of the package that goes out back to the applicant as well. Provide a copy of it up to the city manager and ultimately city council, so that as developers begin to reach out to council members, that you've got your scorecard. This is what it is. This is kind of how our guiding plans, what it recommends. As the cases, if they make it then from pre-tech and they decide to file a zoning case and work through our zoning process, quite often the product changes, quite often the density changes, other influencing factors become available. And as we send that forward through Planning Commission and City Council, we will provide a final, like the final update to that proposal analysis, so that that scorecard is accurate to the final version that's going forward through the public hearing process. I think it's going to be a good tool, both for staff to have when council members get questions from citizens or even the developers. You'll have that fact sheet right there, and to help you make your ultimate final decision when it comes before council. And then kind of touched on it briefly earlier, but study the strategies to provide housing options for our residents' diverse needs, consistent with that council strategic framework. Kind of to many council members' questions tonight, from a planning standpoint, affordable housing is something that it's something that needs to be built, but it is something that is also already built. Some of our older housing product and our older multifamily product actually kind of ticks down, not in terms of quality, but when the new Alta Steel yards and things that are the luxury rentals come in, it kind of resets that spectrum. But kind of looking at our existing product and how to bring forward targeting areas maybe. We're already researching that. We've started compiling a bunch of information from other cities, and it will take time to figure out what are the best practices. And Chandler is Chandler, and we have our Chandler ways, and we need to figure out how to take those best practices and make them work for Chandler. But that's kind of our fourth recommendation to send forward this evening. So that really wraps up our multifamily presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions or go into any other detail, or go back to another slide if you'd like me to.
So in the scorecard that you mentioned, I'm assuming it's already there, just validating, even though it is done separately, would be something, and I don't know where else it would happen, but like the airport commission's endorsement on whether it was a conflict with the airport plan. So I'm assuming that would be a line item on the scorecard, even though it does go planning and zoning, gets fed up to planning and zoning, we get a report directly whether or not, it's supported by the airport plan or not, and
Yep.
by the commission. But on the scorecard, it'd be good to have that line item too, again, when we see those check marks and those pros and cons, to make sure that items like that were on there. So that'd be
Through the
good.
mayor, excellent
Thank
point.
you.
Yeah, definitely, because there'll be the ones within the 9 square mile that will want to have that as if it's down in the Southeast Chandler area plan, we'll want to have that scorecard checkpoint. But excellent point.
And I know, again, I think developers and potential prospects, do approach us, because I think sometimes they're looking before entering much into the process. What do they want to invest something in? But I think often that, I can look at something and to me, I can say this looks good, but I never make a final decision in terms of how am I going to vote to see how it does fit in the rest of the city. And I can think of many developments that, I've been told, well, this has been vacant for 20 years. This is the only thing that can go in there. And that's never a true statement. So to me, it would help us. It's not going to deter, I think, people wanting to talk to get an initial opinion. But I think our developers, if they better understand that this is just an initial opinion, not a final prognosis, nor do you have the favor of council or any of us by an initial view of something, I think it's probably a better longer range help for them. Because I think sometimes I get quoted as saying, well, yeah, visited this person, that person, the mayor or council seems to be for this. But until I've had an analysis from economic development and other factors other than the presentation of a development, I'm not ready to make a decision on it. And I don't think any of our council are either. We've got to see how it fits in longer range with the rest of our city. So I think that those guidelines would be helpful for us to also better communicate to our community and those who want to build within our community. Councilmember Rowe, then Councilmember Orlando.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So to just piggyback on that, and I know planning and zoning has their own leadership and everything, but it'd be nice if they could, and I don't want a huge thing that takes somebody forever to produce, but something that is more than planning and zoning says yes, or planning and zoning says no. It would be nice if there was, for these possible reasons, and if you, and it would be good to see both points of view and maybe even economic development too, so that we could say, look at all this. Anyway, that's my wish list. So thank you.
Councilmember Orlando.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm okay with this in general. But again, I don't want to stifle a developer or someone to be creative and come to me and say, hey, I got an idea here. Normally what I do is say, go to staff anyway. So let's not send a message out that we have a funnel system that you can't go to council, because that's the wrong message we want to send. What we want to do, send a message out, is let us look at this so that we could provide additional information for council. I'm okay with that. But again, for the individuals in this room here, that will not stifle communication, at least from my standpoint. I'll be happy to pick up the phone call anytime. And if I talk to a developer, I'll talk to the residents and vice versa. And they know that. So there's a relationship there. So I don't want to stifle that. But again, I understand what you're trying to do in regards to giving us some idea what this means for that particular area objective. Going back to workforce housing, you know, again, I go back to that Ocotillo piece, how it was such a really good idea. And we really need to be sharing that with the development community and be looking for a larger picture when we want to develop a Four Corner. We want to take a piece of a recreational aspect of it. Maybe that's the city's contribution to it. We want to look at, you know, even if it's a small little park or a basketball court or an element there, where you have houses, you have multifamily, and you have workforce housing. Because, you know, the only people that were working at Northrop Grumman during this shutdown were the workforce. They were the ones on the assembly lines. They were the ones in inventory rooms. They were the ones on shipping and receiving, and they were exposed more than the engineers were. And so I keep asking my developer friends, you want to build all these great multifamily for the engineers, and that's great. But what about those guys and gals that were on the assembly lines and the grocery clerks and the teachers and the firefighters and the kids that want to, you know, start out or downsize, as some of the council members here have done already. So I think we got to look at a larger picture of a mixed use like that, where you're bringing together a community within a community. At least that's my thoughts. And finally, and I don't know, city attorney, you know, we've done a lot of programs downtown throughout the city. We've given, you know, you could talk to some developers in the past that we've actually paid for the painting of, you know, facade upgrades, things like that. You know, that was an investment by the city. So there was a return on that. So I think when we say this, you know, giving the gift clause, let's take a hard look at that, because there's things we did that had a revenue impact. And that's how we got around that gift clause. We were given a revenue impact. So, you know, that should not be a stifling issue here in my mind. It should be something we should look at, and how do we embrace that and work with that, and how we invest and finally go back to the scorecard, Mayor. I think it's a great idea to look at that, but also should be used as a way of helping a developer get a project off the ground. If they're willing to do something unique, then we should be able to do something to help them, whether it's a less of an impact fee or something else that'll help them drive. And we've done this before too, as you guys know. When you come up with certain things, you get certain relief from certain things, whether it's hookup fees or something like that. So again, we got to be creative here, guys. And I know you're trying to get us there, but we got to start running a little bit faster, because we're running out of land. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess. I appreciate everything you guys done. It's been a great idea here. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Council, any additional questions? Looking to my left, looking to my right. All right. Anything else, Kevin?
Nope, that's it, Mayor.
City manager?
No, Mayor. Thank
All
you.
right. That concludes our work session. It is 5:39. We'll start our council meeting at 6 p.m. I want to welcome you all to our regular city council meeting of October 15th, 2020. Got a number of things on our agenda tonight, council, from a regular consent agenda, some public hearings, and some briefings. So to those of you who are watching us online, we want to welcome you as well. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Mayor Hartke,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember McClymans,
Here.
Member Wong, Councilmember Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Orlando.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Our invocation this evening will be led by Pastor Jason Turner from Christian Faith Fellowship Church. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Vice Mayor Renee Lopez. Pastor, welcome and thank you.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you that your scriptures give us direction, that it is our duty to pray for those who have the responsibility to govern. So, Father, tonight, as we head into this session and this time of governance, Father, we pray for every person that has been elected and appointed, that God, you would give them wisdom, patience, love, and understanding for each other and for the issues and for the people of Chandler. Father, we cannot do this alone, and this is not something that we've been called to do by ourselves, but it is the collective effort of people who have a mind to see the progression of this beautiful city. So, Father, we pray that because of their time and their sacrifices that are given to the agenda items, that God, you would bless them and their homes, increase them and prosper them. Father, we thank you for every person that is in this room tonight. We thank you for the blessing of health and strength, and we pray that it continues beyond today and into the days and weeks and months and years to come. We thank you that even though we are in the midst of a difficult moment, that God, you have a way of allowing your light to shine the brightest when things appear to be the darkest. So thank you that in this time and in this season, you'll lead us as we lean to you and ask for your guidance. Father, thank you for blessing the city of Chandler. Thank you for blessing Maricopa County. And thank you for blessing the United States of America. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation. Justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Vice Mayor. So, Council, we had opportunity and good discussion with our consent agenda here from Monday night. Is there any questions? Otherwise, I believe a motion is in order.
No.
Vice Mayor.
I move for the approval of the consent agenda for our regular meeting Thursday, October 15th.
We have a motion. Second by who? Is that Councilmember McClymans? Masks make it difficult sometimes. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any comments before we vote on this?
Yeah.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yes, I wanted to thank Chief Duggan and staff they pushed off some purchasing of some new vehicles for not only for the police department, for also our general fleet for a few months until we figured out our sort of our financial stature. So I wanted to give my appreciation for that. But that's something we'll be approving to move through to get them re-equipped and moving forward. So thank you.
Very good. Any additional? Seeing none, council, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council. Council, next on our agenda is that we have 3 public hearings having to do with annexation. So I would like to open our public hearings. Our first one has to do, it's approximately 1/4 of a mile south of the southeast corner of the 101 Price and Elliott Roads. So with this, I would like to open our public hearing and have Christine Gay, our senior planner, come. Christine.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce Harley Melhorn to the council. Harley is relatively new with the city of Chandler. He's a junior planner. He's been with us since February, and he will be presenting this first public hearing.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Mr. Melbourne. Please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Before you tonight is a public hearing for an annexation request. Located approximately 1/4 of a mile south and southeast of Price and Elliott Roads. It's approximately 0.16 acres in size and is zoned Rural 43 within Maricopa County. Abutting this parcel is Rural 43 to the east within Maricopa County, planned area development for multifamily to the south, excuse me, and Price/101 Road to the west. To the north is an agricultural lot of comparable size. The general plan designates this area as neighborhoods, and there currently exists a single-family residence on the parcel. The annexation has been notified, and 3 signs have been posted. No comment has been received to staff knowledge on this annexation. The applicant has also submitted a rezoning and preliminary development request for multifamily, and this will appear on a forthcoming agenda. Upon annexation, the initial city zoning would be agricultural. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, do you have any questions? Seeing none.
Oh, let's give him one, Mayor.
All right, let's
Come on, he's a new guy. Let's give him one.
break
Come
him
on
in
now.
right. Councilmember Orlando.
Welcome. Do you know the time frame in a multifamily and approximately how many units you think will be there?
Yeah, through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando. This should be appearing on the next council agenda on November 5th. It's approximately 40 units.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Seeing no additional comments from council, is there any discussion from the audience? Seeing none, I'd like to close this public hearing, and again, welcome to Chandler, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Our next public hearing is an annexation approximately 1/4 of a mile north of Germain Road and east of Arizona Avenue. I'd like to open this public hearing and receive a staff presentation again from Christine Gay, our senior planner. Christine.
Thank you again, Mayor. This one I am presenting. And public hearing number 2 is a request to annex. Like you said, it is north of the northeast corner of Arizona Avenue and Germain Road. It is a relatively small site, just over 12,000 square feet in area. You can see on this slide, it's outlined in blue. It's located about 1,300 feet east of Arizona Avenue. The parcel itself is vacant and unimproved with just some overgrown landscaping on it, which is pretty much the same with the surrounding land use to the north and west of this site. To the east, it's adjacent to the railroad, and to the south, you have an existing nursery. Currently, there are utilities available in Arizona Avenue to serve this site. It is zoned within the county RU43. Our equivalent zoning here would be agricultural, AG1. Associated with this annexation is a future potential request to rezone for multifamily as well. That would also be on the November 5th City Council agenda. I believe that is everything I have to share with you. Are there any questions?
So similar to Councilmember Orlando's, when will this be appearing in terms of the future multi-family development? When will that be appearing to us?
The November 5th
So
City
November
Council.
5th as well. Okay, thank you. Council, any additional discussion or questions? Is there any discussion or questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'd like to close our second public hearing. And this now paves the way for our third annexation hearing, which is about 1.71 acres south of the southwest corner of Gilbert and Ocotillo. I'd like to open this public hearing and receive a presentation from Susan Fiala, our city planner. Susan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As stated, yes, your third public hearing on annexations this afternoon. And this property is just less than 1 3/4 acres. It is on the west side of Gilbert Road. It is directly west of the new Chandler Unified School District High School. And this property currently in the county is zoned RU43. It is vacant. It will be initially zoned AG1 under the city zoning. There will be a future proposal coming before you for a senior seminary, which is in conjunction with the Latter-day Saints, and they will be students coming from the new high school across the street. As well, I want to provide as well that the south of this property, there is a dollar storage facility, which is in the city, and to the north, it is still under Maricopa County's control. To the west, there is a city reclamation facility as well. And just the broader picture here, as you see, there is Ocotillo Road to the north and Gilbert to the east of this property here. And you see the commercial to the north as well. With this property, there are current utilities within Gilbert Road that supply utilities currently to the other existing developed sites. I would also like to mention that Gilbert Road is going to be widened in the future for this section from 2 to 3 lanes, and that is part of the 20 to 21 CIP. Although that's not part of this annexation, there will be for future widening as well as a traffic signal that is approximately 660 feet south of Ocotillo to serve the new high school. And with that, I am open to any questions.
Thank you, Susan. Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. It's first I've kind of heard of it earlier this week. We got a little briefing on it. Is that the best? I mean, was that the best option for these kids to be crossing a 6-lane street? I know they have a seminary near Perry High School. It's across a little neighborhood street, very safe. This is a 6-lane road, and they go back and forth all day long, right? I mean, do you know and maybe this isn't the forum for that, but we're annexing under the guise that we're going to put a building here. Is there anything closer on the other side of the street that they looked at, or maybe over where the EOS Fitness is, or something like that, or?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, as to the east side of Gilbert Road, I am unaware that they looked at any other additional property for a seminary. It is pretty much developed. The commercial to the north is the high school, and you have the single family residential there. So with that, yes, they will, any of the students will either have to drive or they will have to walk to the pedestrian crossing and that new traffic signal that is right north of that school district.
So the
property.
signal's right there where they would cross
About
it.
660 feet
Okay.
south of there.
So 600 feet south of Ocotillo, but it's right at where the school would cross over to the seminary. Is that what I heard you say earlier?
Mayor, not directly to that.
Okay.
And I don't have the particulars. I don't want to misspeak
Sure.
on that, but there will be a signal to allow for the pedestrian crossing and signalize at that area.
Thank you. Additional comments? Councilmember Orlando.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick question. So will they be paying for their share of the widening of the seminary on that side
Mayor-
or is it on the other side? So I'm a little confused here.
Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, I do not have that information for anything dealing with the particular road widening. That's not part of this, so I'm not aware.
Okay.
We can look into it
Yeah,
if you'd
please
like.
look into it. I'm assuming they do, but I was just curious. Thanks. Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions or comments from council? Seeing none, is there any discussion or questions from our audience? Seeing none, that I'd like to close our third annexation hearing. And thank you, Susan. I'm not banging the gavel tonight, although I could be. Next on our agenda tonight, council, is we have two briefings. One has to do with the I Choose Chandler Business Hiring Retention Program with Micah Miranda, and the other are police department. So, city manager?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to put these two briefing items on your agenda tonight. As Micah is making his way this direction, just as a reminder on the I Choose Chandler campaign and the business retention program, this is being funded through the CARES dollars that the city of Chandler received, and subject to the gift clause, since we received those and they are considered to be general fund dollars. Micah can talk about the success of the program so far, but I also just wanted to take an opportunity to thank Micah and his staff because his questions continue to arise regarding contract employees at some of our businesses. Economic development worked with legal to come up with what Micah is going to present to you this evening, and we'll be looking for some general acceptance in order to move forward, Mayor.
Please proceed, Micah.
Thank you for the introduction, City Manager, Mayor, and Council. So we are before you tonight to talk about the Choose Chandler Business Hiring and Retention Program. This was launched back in August to aid our small businesses here through this pandemic. So a little bit about it. It is really built around the premise of supporting businesses through the retention and hiring of employees. Council set aside $9.5 million for this program, and the qualifying businesses can receive up to $1,300 per full-time equivalent retained or hired, up to a maximum of $10,000 per business. So the program launched in August, as I said, August 17th to be exact. And to date, we have approved more than 430 businesses. Our most recent number just came in at 442, with a little over $3.3 million in funding awarded to Chandler small businesses. The feedback has been very positive. One of the really positive things that we've gotten from award recipients is the ease of the program and the speed at which the checks go back out. So we're really pleased with how the program's responding. But as the city manager said, we're looking to expand the program. We've received some direction from council to look into some alternative things. And so one of the areas we wanted to look at was helping to provide this benefit to businesses who employ, in the loosest term possible, independent contractors. So we're really looking to structure the program to provide, again, that $1,300 per full-time equivalent under this program, which would be $40,000 in cumulative payments to contracted employees. Again, we're going to try and keep this simple, easy for folks to get through, so we can get these dollars out quickly. Really just looking at a one-page summary of expenses, a look back at their previous year's contracted expenses, as well as making sure they have our business registration through tax and licensing. So we're really funding true Chandler businesses. With your direction, we would like to open this up October 19th and run it through November 9th as our next tranche, if you will, of program funding. Should you go forward with this, we'll get it rolling, get it out there. We have a marketing plan ready to go, ready to execute against it. work with our partners in getting that information out, and simultaneously, and concurrent with this program, we have the I Choose Chandler personal protective equipment program that we are launching in cooperation with the chamber. They have their announcements out to market that program, which will provide PPE kits to Chandler-based businesses to encourage the safe patronage of our small businesses. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
So let me start with one. Explain the kind of businesses that will benefit from this that were not available under the previous tranche or what we were offering.
Mayor, every business in Chandler that engages in hiring independent contractors to fulfill the mission of their business would be eligible to apply. So it's across all industry clusters, really targeting those expenses associated with independent contractors.
All right, so I'm smiling underneath my mask right now, which you can't see because I got that part.
Chosen the eyes.
Yeah, there you go, smiling eyes. Can you give me some examples for those who are watching?
You know, an example could be a gym. They
Okay.
have trainers that come in. Those trainers could work at multiple different locations. And so we were really wanting to get the funding to those businesses. So let's say a gym has $120,000 in contracted expenses for the furtherance of their business. We would divide that $120,000 by the $40,000 threshold, the equivalency of 3 FTEs, and then pay them out $3,900. So that's one example, but it can really be across multiple different industry types.
So some type of other training or schooling type situations beyond fitness that could also apply as long as they met that 40,000 threshold.
Yep. As long as their cumulative independent contractors are $40,000 and above, absolutely. The other program requirements are still in place. We just wanted to expand it to capture those independent contractors.
And is there, okay, there is a max too. Okay, thank you. Council, other questions? Councilmember McClimans.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, I'm supportive of this new change. Good work. I've been thinking back from some members in the community on what could be the what thus far.
3.3 million.
So there's not even.
Nope, that's all inclusive.
Oh, okay, all right. So whoa. It got loud real quick. One program I've been thinking about is a loyalty program, and how can you structure a loyalty program, a gift card program that fits under the gift clause, that's even a gift card. And one thought I thought is all the businesses that participated, if they wanted to participate in the next phase, you could structure a gift card program that's tied still to the number of employees. So, for example, if a business in downtown Chandler, I'll just use a restaurant, Hidden House. I don't know if they applied or not, but let's say they did apply and they had enough employees, so they got the $10,000. And they wanted to participate in a gift card program. The way the gift card program is, it would still be tied per employee. And so they could receive up to $10,000 in gift card matching. And what to initiate those gift cards, community members would have to go and purchase a $25 gift card, and then we would match that. And so what it could do is it could amplify the amount of impact towards the business, but we're still tying it to per employee. Does that make sense?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Clemens, I think I get what you're getting at. I would love to explore the opportunity in more detail around the mechanisms that we put those in place with, but absolutely.
And just to strive on, we're community innovation. There's actually software that utilizes blockchain that can track this, and you can run nodes that will simplify it and actually allow us to execute it quickly and fast. And if you just utilized it with the businesses that did apply, and then they would have to re-sign up to want to give gift cards, you could, if we ended up giving out 3 million in gift cards, that means that it was double that amount actually went towards the business community. So it could greatly have a great multiplier effect from a dollar perspective. So just wanted to offer that. Thanks.
Second.
We certainly would like him to,
I heard block
to,
too.
to research this and get back
Yeah.
rather than vote on this tonight, council.
Further discussion?
Quickly changing the topic, Councilmember Orlando.
No, I want to thank you and Marcia, your staff, as well as Kelly, your staff, for bringing us forward. Again, I know this is something that we're crawling into. And so, but this is something that, as you know, consultants have come to me and then others in this council saying, look, how can I handle that? And it's going to go a long way and help broaden the base of an individual, along with other ideas of, gift cards, things like that. So anything to, get them through this next, next phase would be great. So thank you very much for all the work you did on this. Appreciate it.
Council, any additional comments or questions for Micah on this? Seeing none, thank you, Micah. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So to summarize, it sounds like council would be supportive of opening and continuing this program. Excellent. Thank you.
That's what I'm hearing.
All right. Do you want me to move on to the next item?
Let's move on to the second.
All right. Mayor and Council, as everyone knows these days and for the last number of months, you pretty much can't turn on any news channel without seeing something around policing, some kind of incident, something that somebody's looking at somewhere, tragedies, to be quite honest. And so I do want to applaud Chief Duggan and our police department for continuing to look at the City of Chandler Police Department policies and programs and procedures. And so I've asked Chief Duggan to come forward. It's been several months since he was in front of you talking about some of these issues, and at least let you know what the police department has done in the last few months to continue to address these items.
Well, thank you, City Manager, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Back in June, actually, I had an opportunity to speak to you, and I talked about the police department's response to the George Floyd protests. But I also talked about how, as a department, we have been in a constant state of reform and transition over many years. And I discussed how we continually seek to improve and update our policies, our procedures, and our programs, and how we are engaged as a police department, and we're paying attention to what's happening around us so we can help shape our profession moving forward. And then I provided some examples of how we actually adopted some recommendations from the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing report back in 2015, and then also the Police Executive Research Forum's report on use of force back in 2016. And just most recently, we reviewed the President's Executive Order on Safe Policing for Safe Communities. And that affirmed again that we are holding ourselves to the higher standards of performance. And of course, each day we are looking and learning from our neighbors and departments all across the country. We're learning from their successes and we're learning from their mistakes. And since I last spoke to you in June, we have continued to grow and evolve, and we have not stood still. In fact, we've made a number of adjustments to our policies and our programs. And I thought tonight just be an opportunity to share and update some of those changes with you. So, for example, moving forward, all no-knock search warrants will require approval from the Office of the Chief. So, in the past, that authorization was provided at a lower level in the organization, but now we have added a whole different level of accountability and oversight to that to ensure that all other options are explored before a no-knock warrant is sought. And of course, those type of warrants are they are allowed under state statute, and of course, they must be signed by a judge. But the reality is they are seldom used in our police department. Another area we talked about was use of force and the use of force reporting. So effective a number of months ago, all use of force reports are now reviewed all the way through the chain up to the level of Office of the Chief. And again, an added layer of oversight and accountability. So when an officer is compelled to use force against a suspect on the street, that officer then completes a separate form documenting that force and the type of force that was used. And in the past, that level of review would go to the sergeant, to the lieutenant, and then the commander, usually the precinct commander. And now we've just taken that to a different level. So we have a more timely oversight over any type of use of force that occurs in our city. And over many years, we've talked about de-escalation. And we just realized that we didn't really have a succinct definition of de-escalation. So we are preparing a simple definition of de-escalation. So as we talk about it, now we can frame what that exactly means. And then another change we made to our policy is that officers are now required to, anytime a suspect is arrested and that person may resist arrest, the officer then often would take that person to the ground per their training and then handcuff them. So moving forward, although this is practice and it's taught in training, it's never been in policy, but the expectation now for policy is to return that person to a recovery position as soon as possible when it's safe to do so. And that's simply having that person seated up so it doesn't impact and affect their breathing. So again, it's something that we train for years and years, but now it's explicitly written in policy to, as soon as it's safe to do so, return the suspect to a recovery position. Another significant change in our policy is following any type of officer-involved shooting or a in custody death. In addition to the investigators that would respond to that, we're also going to be sending our training sergeant out to the scene. So when the investigation, all the investigative measures are completed, that training sergeant now can look at that incident and look at the training, the tactics, and equipment, and make some immediate changes or recommendations, while the other investigation may play out over weeks, but likely over months. So that gives us a lot more mobility, and we're nimble, and we're able to affect if we need to change right away based on that incident. Another change to our policy is that we've talked about duty to intervene. That's been a fabric of our department for many years. So now we are putting our money where our mouth is and ensuring that those duty to intervene scenarios are based in our training, our reality-based training. So officers will be taught that, they'll be conditioned that it's not just a policy, but it will become an expectation and really ingrained in the culture of the department. And then the last one I'll leave you with is really a significant change. We've had a standing training committee comprised of sworn officers and professional staff. And that training committee, each year, they look at the calendar of training. What training will we provide, in-service training, to our officers? And they help identify those needs. So what we did this year is we added a citizen to that training committee. So we have a citizen that brings different perspective, different insight, and certainly demonstrates that we are transparent and open. And it's very, very important to have that engagement with our community. But also, we added a different charge to that committee. So in addition to scheduling out the training, that committee now is responsible for looking at events that have happened regionally and nationally around the country, and look at those events through the lens of a Chandler police officer. So whether it's Kenosha or Rochester or Houston or any other event that when it happens, it's blasted all over social media and the news, and everyone talks about it. Our officers talk about it, we talk about it, our neighbors, our family, everyone is looking at that event. And again, it's just through what's released through the videos, which doesn't always tell the complete story, but based on what we know, we will be looking at those incidents, and we already have, and pushing out how would we expect the Chandler officer to respond in that particular case based on information we know at the time. So our training, our tactics, our expectation, our leadership, our culture. So we can then have that conversation as an organization and learn from others moving forward. And it just gives us another opportunity to learn and grow. So again, I just want to convey tonight the fact that we are not standing still. We're certainly paying attention, and we are committed to being a leader in our profession. And we know that our community, a community that we know supports us, a community that stands alongside us, really deserves, and they expect nothing less. And that's what we're committed to do. So constant state of evolution, and I'm sure that I'm quite positive there's more to come. We do another briefing perhaps in a few months, but we are not standing still. We're learning, we're growing, and we're representing our community with a lot of pride. So that's what I wanted to share with you tonight.
Thank you, Chief. I'm sure there might be a couple questions here, and I'll start off. As probably many here, and I know you have, we've responded to hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of inquiries and questions, and I'm grateful that I was able to respond with things in Chandler that went above and beyond the 8 can't wait that we've been training, and I want to thank you for leading on that. I do have one suggestion for your last item there is can we prioritize making sure that that is a minority in our community rather than someone else that maybe has the optics of someone who is grown up as a minority and perhaps has had a family different view of police, that they would give us a different vantage of that as well. And I'll leave it as a suggestion at this point, but I know what you're trying to do is you want to get different optics, but I think that would provide a specific set of optics that perhaps that I don't see, that you perhaps don't see as well on there. So I love your ideas. So Council, other questions or comments for Chief? Vice Mayor.
Yes, I want to thank you and again, all the police officers out there that dealing with these scenarios. And I recall when I first came on in 2016, which came out I think the following year when you reported on it on the like you said the national policing recommendations. That you already instituted a vast majority of those, and a few tweaks here and there, but that shows the leadership that you have brought to Chandler and the culture that you have fostered within Chandler to allow, like I said, the community policing. All the outreach that you've done, and across even to the precinct commanders, all the neighborhood meetings. We get a lot of positive feedback on that, and I think that helps again foster that community feeling that our people can reach out to our police officers at any level of leadership, either the beat cop or the commander or watch commander out on the street. I think they're all approachable. So I think fostering that culture has been extremely positive in Chandler. And I wound up actually most recently receiving some feedback from a federal level. I wound up talking with one of our congressmen, and he actually had very, very positive things to say about the leadership that we have here in Chandler in the police and in fire. That we're definitely a step up, of not just around the state, but nationally. When he talks with other congressmen on what they're dealing with. He's, again, kudos to you and the team, and thank you.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Orlando.
Thanks, Mayor. I do want to echo, again, thank you for all you do and what the police, the everyday officers do. And I do want to echo the mayor's thoughts on that. It's about looking at a different optics when we do this training. I think that's be helpful. And if you have to hire 2 civilians, that's okay too. You have to have 2 civilians on there, or that's fine too. But I do like the idea of having different perspectives. That helps us grow. As you pointed out earlier, you came up here, some of these incidents help you grow and your officers grow in thought process. This could take us to the next level as well, I believe. So let's continue working that progressive thought process that we've had for a long time. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for that presentation. It's been a hard year. I mean, it's been one of those kind of years with the heat, with the impact of the George Floyd, with everything that's gone on with our police force. And I got to tell you that talking right to them, to your team, is that we're proud of them. I mean, we know that there's a culture of accountability within your department, and we're proud of that. And so when you think about the things that you just listed and the things on the 8 can't wait, we were already doing that. And that's what makes me proud of, our police force here. So continue to keep sharpening the saw, continuing to come to us and ask for what you need, if it's technology, if it's whatever it may be, to make your team feel comfortable, to make our community feel safe when we're crossing paths or whatever that may be. Continue to ask for those things, and we'll do our best to support you and especially your team. So we are proud of them, and I want to thank you.
All right. Seeing no additional comments, thank you, Chief.
Mayor, thank you, and certainly appreciate all your support and the support of our entire community. But it's the men and women of the police department. At the end of the day, they're the ones out there. They're out there right now. They're out there at 3 a.m, They're out there investigating crime and they're helping to protect our community. And it all comes down to them. It's an amazing team we have here in the city, and they are the absolute most committed, talented group of individuals I've ever worked with. So very proud, and the kudos is to them.
I think we couldn't agree more. So,
Thank
thank you, sir. City Manager, anything else on those?
No, Mayor, thank you.
All right. Council, that brings us to unscheduled public appearances. Do we have any tonight, City Clerk?
Mayor, I have not received any cards.
All right, no cards received. Seeing no people gesticulating wildly in the audience, we'll move on to current events. Shall start. I have 3 announcements to make tonight. First was a pleasant news today. I received word today that Chandler was named the happiest city in the state and the 10th happiest city in the nation by Zippia, a leading career search website. So, Councilmember McClymans, I know fairly recently you took your family to Disneyland, but now you can say you are in the happiest city in the state of Arizona. Zippia looked at education, income, home prices, commute times, and family life to develop these rankings. And I do know that our council and staff work hard every day to ensure Chandler is a world-class city that provides an exceptional quality of life. And I'm glad to see that the hard work of so many of our great employees and direction from council is paying off with this accolade. Secondly, I'd like to talk briefly, as our Economic Development Director, Micah Miranda, mentioned, the I Choose Chandler PPE Kit Program. So this week we launched the I Choose Chandler PPE Kit Program, and Council approved an AZ Cares grant allocation of $500,000 to be allocated to PPE equipment to support the Chandler businesses impacted by COVID-19 and to ensure the public health of our Chandler community at large. So each qualified business will receive a kit that consists of masks, hand sanitizer, dispenser stand, and promotional materials worth $240. The city has contracted the Chandler Chamber to administer this program, and just before council, I spoke with Terry Kimball, our chamber director, and she has said the program has now been in effect 2 days, yesterday and today, and already they've given out 150 roughly of these kits. So it seems to be working. So again, thank you, council, thank you, city manager and staff, and thank you, chamber, for this partnership. Lastly, I'd like to introduce and highlight our Chandler Halloween Spooktacular. It's back, but it's back in a whole new form. Downtown Chandler is excited to host a drive-through experience, keeping the fun traditions and excitement of Halloween alive in a safe and engaging environment. So we're inviting our residents and community to travel along Commonwealth Avenue, east of Arizona Avenue, to expect to see some larger-than-life scenic environments featuring Halloween favorites. So we invite our community to mark your calendar for Thursday, October 29th from 6 to 9 p.m., or Friday, October 30th from 1 to 4 and 6 to 9 p.m. And please don't forget about the Halloween costume contest that people can apply for. Submit an online photo entry by Sunday, October 18th, and you have the opportunity to win. You know, council, I think if we show up, we're a pretty scary bunch ourselves. I mean, politicians in today's world are pretty scary. Yeah, even masked or unmasked. I'm not sure what is scarier. So, council, I'm going to be there Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. and I invite you to join me to help set up this, so that they've invited our help if you would care to help us all. And those are what I have to share. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. If there are Reese's peanut butter cups, we might have to get some early peanut butter cups just to make sure they're good this year. Anyway, hey, just giving you a heads up, the HOA Academy is coming up very shortly, and I've been hearing from a number of residents on questions on how to effectively work with their HOAs. Believe it or not, HOA has a lot of power to make change with the neighborhood. It's actually one of the most powerful groups in the state and can sometimes supersede city ordinances in some cases. So remind those residents that when the HOA Academy that's coming up on 11 a.m. to noon on Tuesday, October 20th, the Mulcahy Law Firm, EC, will be on Facebook Live as well to discuss these two topics: HOAs and condos in crisis, tips for HOAs and condos on how to survive and thrive during the COVID-19 pandemic, and federal laws. And I'm sure there'll be some questions as well about Airbnbs. But you can get the details for that on the link below. So please look into that. And then I also want to remind everybody that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So please share and spread the word to help raise awareness. Maybe share a story about how you or a loved one has been affected by breast cancer. Support by spreading the word this month on social media, or host a virtual fundraiser, or make a one-time monthly donation to a woman in need or someone that needs treatment. But it's just something to take away from this meeting and remember and wear your pink. Thank you.
And Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Wong, I do want to thank you for your work on the census, which is officially closed as of now. I know that you two have been passionate with this, and I don't know our final numbers, but I know it's better than it would have been had we not had good leadership and aggressive efforts in our community. So I want to thank both of you for that. So, Councilmember McClimans.
Thank you, Mayor. We find out the final numbers.
Well, as the chairman of the committee, I will defer to the expert, which is Leah Powell, who actually did all the work. Her and her team deserve the real credit for the census. I can't say enough.
Mayor Harkey, Council, thank you very much. Yes, the census has concluded officially as of today. Our self-response number is 74.5%, which, to put that in perspective, we hit 76% back in 2000 and 75% in 2010. So considering the number of events that were stalled because of COVID, 74.5% is pretty good. We will get preliminary numbers from the census, but then we take an opportunity to go back and double check that all households were tallied. And that'll take place over the next 3 months or so, 3 to 4 months. And then eventually we'll get final numbers probably in about a year or so that'll give us all of our statistics.
Okay. Thank you.
So not that we're competitive, but how did we do compared to our neighbors?
Well, I might add, Mayor, members of the council, as far as cities go, Chandler was the #1 city in the state for self-response. And when you look at the state as a whole, including towns, we were #4. One of our neighboring towns was #1, but we were #4. And when you look at cities, and especially cities of our size, we were #1.
So I heard we were the top city. Thank you.
Top city, yes, we
We're
were.
the top city. Yes.
Happiest
I'll
top
need an
city.
infographic on that, please.
Sorry for that diversion. I was curious. All right, so it's budget time. We wrapped our budget last year. We did it twice. Now it's on budget. So right now, the city of Chandler is starting the budget process. Encourage residents to provide their thoughts about the community and its future through the annual budget survey. The budget survey results are shared with the mayor, city council, city managers, and staff to assist in the formation of the city's financial plan. The survey will be available online until Sunday, November 15th. Paper copies are also available at city facilities. What is vital as the city plans for the future? So please take a couple minutes to fill out the survey. That's all I got. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, and we continue to ask for our residents' input. So not just in the census to help make sure that we're counting everybody, not just to make sure that we're going to spend the money well for you all. We also want to specifically ask our residents to help us out with the airport master plan. So we are currently in the reviews and inputs for the Chandler Airport Master Plan. So we have a public meeting coming up. And over the past 10 months, the City of Chandler's Airport Planning Advisory Committee and Kaufman Associates have been working on an update to this airport master plan. An update is required by the FAA every 10 years to be used to proactively guide for existing needs as well as the growth and for future growth and development within the airport over the next 20 years. The final Airport Master Plan public meeting to discuss the proposed developments, concepts, and funding sources needed will be held on Wednesday, October 28th at 5 p.m. This will be a virtual meeting and held for interested participants to join online or by phone. You can RSVP there at that website, and you can also learn more to register online. Oh, I thought it'd be zoomed in, so I couldn't do the. Here it is. Sorry. And that's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
I'm not quite sure what that was, but okay. So,
They zoom in, and so the website is below you, and I was going to do it below, but they didn't zoom in. Never mind.
all right.
That kind of went.
Councilmember Wong.
First of all, we know finally autumn is here. So enjoy the good temperature. Second, I would like to say something a little bit heavy. We normally hockey program October as the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I currently serve on the Maricopa Association of Governments Domestic Violence Council. And I would like to use this opportunity to remind once again to bring the awareness to this important topic. Domestic violence does not discriminate and can happen to anyone, men or women. So be sure to check in often, especially during this pandemic with friends and loved ones. If you or someone you know needs help, you can call the phone number on the screen. And your one phone call, please don't underestimate, could save a person or even a family. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work with MAG too.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a short announcement about the Chandler Cares team. The Chandler Cares team is based out of the city's Neighborhood Resources Department and is available to assist you and your family when dealing with difficulties related to the country's ongoing situation. If you have experienced a loss of income, have unexpected expenses, or are in need of food, medical, utility, rental, or other assistance, you can contact the team through the information listed on the screen. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Orlando.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, our city clerk doesn't get much acknowledgement over the course of in the bigger picture. But I want to thank her today and the council up here because we had such a huge call for where do I drop our ballots off. Well, she was supposed to schedule for the 19th, but she was able to get hold of the county and get a ballot box dropped right here at City Hall in the lobby. I want to thank you and your staff for making it happen. So not only are we the happiest city, one of the best census city, but we're also taking care of those voters that are ready to drop off ballots. So thank you very much for that, you and your team. Appreciate that. I understand it was filled up twice in the last 2 days, so we're really bringing ballots, right?
Yeah, as of yesterday, we had, Councilmember Orlando, approximately 20,000 ballots dropped off for the city of Chandler.
Wow. That's great. That is outstanding. Thank you. Well, thank you for responding. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about, we have Veterans Day coming up on the 11th, and Chandler is still trying to do great ideas on how to honor our veterans. And so what we're doing this time is we're compiling a Chandler Veterans Database, which will be used as a foundation for initiatives to honor those that have served, to tell the stories in Chandler. If you're a veteran and would like to share your story, or if you're a family member of a veteran and you want to share your member story, we'd be honored to have you go online, fill out the database, send a picture as well. And then the stories that are submitted in early October will have the possibility of being featured in our November's Chandler's Veterans Path of Honor at Veterans Oasis Park. I filled mine out today. Did you get yours done, Vice Mayor? All right, City Vice Mayor got his done as well. So thank you for your service as well. So thank you, my fellow veterans, for your service, and we look forward to sharing your stories with the rest of the residents of Chandler. Mayor, other than get out there and vote, thank you very much.
All right. And I do want to thank Councilmember Stewart and our County Supervisor, Jack Sellers, for having a role in that piece too, to get that voting box to us, as Dana has told me. So thank you for responding and getting that out. And to say happy birthday to Dawn Lang. And I saw you had a cake over there. I'm sure your family will enjoy it. So, City Manager.
Mayor, I don't know how to top all of those number ones, so I have nothing else tonight. Thank
All
you.
Stay happy, City Manager. With that, that concludes our meeting. We'll see you in a few weeks.